Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. So happy to have you join us again today. I'm Alice Lema. I'm a broker with John L. Scott here in Southern Oregon. And today we're going to have Guy Giles from Mutual Mortgage in the studio. Today we're going to be talking about Fed Week. There was another pretty big announcement from the Federal Reserve Bank. Guy Giles from Mutual Mortgage is going to be here talking to us about what that means to Southern Oregonians buying and selling homes. So before Guy comes in, I want to take a quick minute and bring you up to speed about what's going on in all three counties, our local market statistics. Let's start with Josephine County first. Josephine County this week, prices year over year are down 1%. In the residential market, the average single family home costing $396,191. Number of solds year over year in Josephine County were up 5%. There were 18 closings on SOMLS this week in the residential market in Josephine County. The number of listings were up 6% year over year in Josephine County. There are now 274 active listings on SOMLS. So a little bit different from last week where everything was looking rosy, but that just goes to show a little bit of volatility still exists, at least in Josephine County. Let's talk about Jackson County. Jackson County year over year this week was down 3%. Prices, the average single family home costing $450,587. Number of solds year over year in Jackson County were down 17% in the residential market. There were 32 closings on SOMLS in Jackson County this week. Number of listings year over year in Jackson County were up 5%, which is great news. There were 635 active listings on SOMLS this week in the residential market in Jackson County. Klamath County prices year over year this week were down 12%. The average single family residential home in Klamath County this week costing $314,800. The number of sold year over year in Klamath County were up 66%. There were 10 closings on SOMLS in Klamath County this week in the residential market. That's mostly due to a real bad week this time last year. Number of listings year over year in Klamath County were down 2%. There were 213 active listings in Klamath County this week on SOMLS in the residential market. So again, we have still some volatility in all three counties, but if you compare it to the volatility proportion we've had over the last year, this is actually starting to settle down. Our numbers, when they go down, they're not quite as dramatic. Jackson County number of solds is down 17% year over year. That is kind of a big number, but it does reflect ongoing inventory shortage problems in all three counties. Now, we were able to show number of listings up year over year in both Jackson County and Josephine County, 5% each. So people are starting to get their houses on the market more so than this time last year. So great time to buy, great time to sell. Not always the case in both directions, but definitely looking forward to a good spring. So now let's say hi to Guy. Well, Guy Giles, it's so glad to have you back. Thanks for coming on again.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be back. Just this is just another crazy week. Feels like we've been going through this for a year and a half now, as far as just kind of waiting and hoping we can get some of this inflation under control so the Fed can start lowering their rates.
Well, and as we were talking before we went on air, we kind of call this Fed Week. We have these every so often. How about we just kind of start there?
Yeah, I mean, generally they'll come out and they'll say something, and the news media will run with whatever their narrative is, and then it takes a day or two to just kind of disseminate all of the information, just kind of like our jobs numbers I've been talking about for a little while. Usually we don't really get the real story until the following month, and they've done all their revisions for the month that they just did. So That said, there are a couple things that have hung on kind of stubbornly that have held the Fed up. I still think the 2% is a little bit of an unrealistic number, mainly because it's a lagging number and kind of an unrealistic one as far as when we'll cut rates. But I think that there's enough other factors in there, even though they did not lower their rates this week. There's some other factors from the outside that are going to show or that are going to prove that it is really time to start lowering them down. So we are expecting it, within the next couple of months. And just like I always say, it does not directly affect our rates, but inflation does, and it's just an overall look. So we just kind of end up going hand in hand with what they have going on. So really at this point, we have had a bump to the home loan rates. We had a really good rally. It felt like for a few weeks, everybody was out and buying houses and going crazy. And then here we go again, with a bunch of, you can call them real, I call them fake job numbers that came out. And anyway, it put a little bit of a disruption for a few weeks, but it pains me to say we're back under 7%, but as far as I'd love to be talking mid sixes by now is where we really thought we would be by this year. And truthfully, on some government stuff, I am locking people in there, but on the regular, we're right around 7% just as an industry. And it's hard, you might have a person with a really good credit score and a really good down payment, or a person with not so good a credit score and not a great down payment. And when we say what rates are, that's kind of blending everybody in together. So it's
like an average.
Yeah. And it doesn't really factor in, are some places charging points and other places not charging points. So it's to say it's a general thing is kind of an understatement. If you're doing one of these exotic brokered loans that might get a self-employed person into a house, you could be looking at 8 to 11, 12%. So, it's just best to call. It doesn't take me too long to, kind of nail down about where you'd be if you had a kiddo or something that you're trying to help figure out if it's a good time to buy or not. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, just because it's on a case by case. There are some really good incentives for first-time homebuyers right now. So, that's another thing. If you're legitimately, a first-time home buyer, definitely you might want to talk. They've lowered some mortgage insurance. I'm doing my webinar on it where I'm learning about it, to where we'll have kind of a 1% down, no mortgage insurance. But that said, everybody's not going to fit in that bucket. It's going to be, of course, for some people with different incomes, and there's always what the big print giveth, the little print taketh away sometimes. So I don't want to get ahead of my skis talking about a program until I know that it's really legit.
Well, it's exciting to hear that there are first-time homebuyer incentive programs again, because for a long time we didn't really have much in that department.
I've been seriously telling people since I got into the business, because I'd even heard of first-time homebuyer programs when I got into the business, and I started asking people, "What's your first-time homebuyer? What's our first-time homebuyer?" And all excited so I could tell people, because they still ask me today. And realistically, FHA is your first-time homebuyer program. I mean, that's really what it's designed for. You might have a tax incentive like we had for a couple of years, or something like this where they're trying to make it a little bit more attractive. But a lot of times, any of these things that people are hearing about for first-time home buyers, or maybe a grant through Access, or something that might help them a little bit with a down payment, or if you just have really, really low income. So I'm thinking with this new program, there will be some income restrictions. So unfortunately, it won't be for everybody that is a first-time home buyer. But to keep up with FHA, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have actually come up with Home Ready, Home Possible, a couple of different loan programs that you can have as little as 3% down and do it. And what this program that I'm supposed to be getting next week, it's supposed to kind of pick up the gap where you don't really have to come in with much more than 1%. We can talk about it a little bit more next month. But as far as just people in general, I'm still seeing a lot of first-time home buyers getting in contract. It feels like a
Oh,
lot more
that's
than,
exciting.
yeah, that's always my favorite thing is being at one of those signings, and I was at a couple this week. Um, Also, on the other side of the spectrum, where I closed a reverse mortgage, and it'll probably be their last home loan. So
Mhm.
we do a little bit of everything here, and it's all fun just helping people. So the more these rates go down, the more we're going to help people. What we've been just up against is sticker shock. You've been driving by that car for a couple of years, and it was you kind of had an idea of what that car was going to cost you, and maybe if the car didn't even go up in price too much, all of a sudden, the finance guy or gal looks you in the eye and just says, that payment's going to be a little bit more than you thought. So that's been scaring people, but I do think that they're coming around a little bit, just realizing that if we wait for these rates to really truly drop, you're going to be at that car lot fighting with 100 people over that same car, and that's
Well,
not.
and also we saw before the prices go up. It's not
Yes.
instantaneous, but it doesn't take long.
No, no, not at all. And then everybody's swirling around and trying to trying to figure out how they can make themselves look just a little bit better than that other buyer. And then we go back to what how do you do that? And I really didn't even mean to mention this, but really come in and get pre-approved. Make sure you're really truly ready to go. That could set you apart from the guy with a rocket loan or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and not all sellers like those online loans. We're talking to Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage, Fed Week, as we call it. We do have to take a quick word and say thank you to our sponsors, John L. Scott, Ashland, and Medford, Guy Giles Mutual Mortgage, and our local Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, folks, to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema. I'm a local broker here in Southern Oregon with John L. Scott Real Estate. We're talking to one of our favorite people, Guy Jaya, Mutual of Mortgage. Thanks again for coming on the show, Guy.
Well, thanks. I'm feel like it's Groundhog Day. I mean, literally every week or every month or whenever we talk, I'm just like, it's right around the corner. We're going to start seeing rates drop. It's right around the corner, and I think we're finally at that point. I think 19. We have our Fed, and then there's just a whole bunch of little mini Feds, running around all over the country, and all of them talk, and usually when they get a consensus, then finally, something ends up happening for the good. And what we've been looking at lately is I think 19 of them are, the vast majority are still looking at three cuts for this year, even though they haven't started happening yet. A couple of them want no cuts, but the vast majority are all between 50, what we call basis points, or 75 basis points, meaning 0.5% to 0.75%, which it doesn't sound like a lot with as much as they've raised it up. But I do think some of the fundamental things out there should lend to, everything just once it starts moving, getting better. These guys are really slow to react. If you look at this thing, I mean, they finally came out this week and said, "Hey, maybe we waited a little bit too long to raise rates." And and then another one was like, "Yeah, we probably waited a little too long, to raise rates." And as frustrating as that is, and something we all had to live through, there is an appetite to start lowering these things down. They're just really, really worried that they're going to move too fast, and then all of a sudden everything heats up again. But I think it's pretty undeniable now that things have to go down. We have our unemployment rate that's raised up a little bit from 3.7 to 3.9%. If it gets, a bunch of them have said if it gets above 4.1, which could very easily happen, next month, then that's a little bit of an issue. Like three-quarters of them still think it'll stay under there, but the way it's been creeping up, it should hit, and that should help a lot. Shelter cost is another one that's been, really, really stubborn, because especially through COVID, through everything that we dealt with, it wasn't cheap to rent a place, and then all of a sudden they made it not cheap to buy a place. So we were fighting all those factors also. What they look at a lot is new rents, and then other people look at, hey, I'm just renewing my rents. And they came out with more of a blended rate this last week. So it shows just a combination of them. So you don't have one skewing the other too bad, because what does rent really cost? Well, people renew their houses and they get new ones. So just factoring in one of those doesn't really make a lot of sense. And that actually pushed pushed it down a little bit as far as that goes, and it's like 2.6% right now, where it was up to 14% back in 2022. So it's
Hmm.
dropped down quite a bit as far as that goes. It was crazy. As a landlord, you're probably kind of happy with that going up, but at that time, at that rate, that's too much for people to even absorb.
Well, and it was a spike. It's not, that was an anomaly. The Southern Oregon rents are definitely going up. We've been watching them go 3 bedroom, 2 bath house. Not that long ago, you could get maybe for 1900 a month with a garage. And now I see them regularly renting for 2100 to 2400, and they're getting takers. And that's our local Southern Oregon rental market.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, one thing that's a little bit of a bright side with all of this is, builders' confidence wasn't great
I
for
was
a
just going to ask you
while.
that. Yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, they've been hit. They've been hit from all sides over the last few years. Everybody was. I don't know if it was everybody was doing home projects or they wouldn't let truckers deliver wood, but obviously the prices for everything just went through the roof. Then you couple that with living in a state that loves to just put more constraints on the home builders. Let's have a plug-in for your hybrid on the north side of the hill that has to have solar. And that's just a little bit of an extreme example, but definitely something
But
that
aren't they
builders.
are they have, I think they're having to put in the electronic vehicle plugins though, right? Is that
Yeah, and that's not really my end of it. I just kind of hear, here and there from the
uh-huh.
Builders Association, or I'll have something come over. So I don't know what they've actually made happen. I just keep
We
thinking about,
should ask Brad Bennington from the Builders Association to come back on and talk about
we should have them on
the
because
add-ons.
the home show's coming up. I'll call them right after we get done.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that. We can talk about the home show and the items.
Well,
And there's a lot of building going on in Southern Oregon, but I think people don't understand how many years ago that was put into works. It takes a long time in
it
Oregon.
does. It does. And they finally, extended our urban growth boundary. I don't even know what committee I was on the day they did that, but that made people pretty excited because, the cost here is, it is expensive, especially when there's just a finite amount of ground, and nobody wants to see some crazy thing like Arizona where they're spread out for 150 miles. But, thankfully a lot of this land is owned by us, the citizens, as far as BLM, yeah, Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah, yeah, or the forestry or
Yeah,
one of the
so
counties. Yeah.
so so down in our footprint where we can build, we really should, because we still do have a whole lot of beautiful wilderness around
Mhm.
us. And
I was just down in the new urban growth boundary reserve. They call it reserve. So if you see
mhm,
listings that have urban growth boundary reserve, and a lot of the properties that are being brought in are pretty medium sized and good sized farmland. So it's going to be interesting because some people are really excited to buy those right now, banking that they're going to sell it to one of the builders in 5 to 20 years. And then other people are really shying away from making offers on those because they don't want to be that close to a subdivision. It's kind of an interesting time. It's a double-edged sword.
yeah, one of these days they'll be looking back and saying grandma was really smart or grandma was not as smart. But it's just, it really is, you're just gambling a little bit with that. And that's actually what makes this country great, as far as people just having the entrepreneurial spirit to be able to, look ahead
Well,
and
and yeah,
invest
yeah,
in something.
exactly. And have choices and get to make the choice yourself.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess it remains to be seen, what a lot of that land ultimately turns into. But there is definitely a lot more buildable ground, than there was before they expanded that urban growth boundary. And hopefully we'll have some houses for people to live in. And
Yeah, it just takes longer in Oregon because we do have more rules because they're trying to keep the state at a certain balance. Would you say they're trying to balance the open space?
yeah, and I mean, one thing I have on my property, or I actually made nests for them, just little flat rock things for the killdeer. I mean, and we definitely want spaces for our wildlife to have a bird to have a place to land and things like that. So it's not all bad when I'm bitching about, a lot of the things coming down. But let's
Well,
just
it's a balancing act, right?
yeah, and we've had some legislation come out, that's a little bit more pro building. We do have a governor right now that's at least working with people on that, which is nice to see because we haven't seen any of that for a long, long time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of the shortcuts that she's authorized are interesting. The apartments that are going up over on the Northridge Center over by Ram, that
Mm.
restaurant Ram, and
Yeah,
I think it's Home Store and one of the big sporting goods stores. Well, that's prefabricated modular panels. So
that's
they're stick built, but they were built somewhere else and then kind of trucked in and then put together. I jokingly call like Legos.
no, it's kind of cool. We've had guidelines for years where they treat the modulars a little bit more like a stick built house than they do the manufactured ones. Where and the distinction, like you said, is one you build someplace else and then you know haul over there. And I know this is kind of going remedial, but the funny part is I've never really dealt with the modular type houses. I don't know if they just don't build a lot of them around here, but I don't know that I've ever actually financed a true modular house, one that they built someplace else, then hauled in and then put together on the site. Maybe I have, and I haven't been paying attention, but something we've been hearing about forever, and it does get mixed up with manufactured housing, and the pricing is a little bit better on the modular than it is on the
Well,
manufactured.
because isn't it 2x6, 2x4, 2x6
Yeah, but
construction?
so are the manufactured houses in this day and age. I think the issue is that they just still put that in the bucket of it being stick built on the property. But and then there's still the all the little cheap wobblies down, on the side that go away every time a tornado comes through.
Well, and we're going to have to take a quick break. We're talking to Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage. Well, hey, Southern Oregon, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. We have Guy Giles here today. We're talking about Fed Week. The Federal Reserve Bank had some big announcements. And just to loop back to that before we go on, Guy, I was a little surprised that they reinforced the idea of having three more or up to three more rate cuts because they are obviously concerned about the economy and there's obviously more money being poured into the economy, which is slowing down the inflation efforts, right?
Yeah, at this point, there's definitely not, I mean, I know from my different friends, I have wealthier friends that are not flying the airplane as much, and then I have other friends that are not going to the store as much, and so yeah, I think everybody, I'm not talking to anybody right now that is beating down the door at Waterworld to buy a side by side, or, I mean, people are just gonna keep things running a little bit longer. David Mayhew, a buddy of mine, that's just starting up his motorcycle shop. Give a little plug for him. He's
Oh,
best
that's
mechanic
exciting.
in
What kind of
town.
motorcycles? Sorry.
He works on about everything, but he's really specializes in Ducatis and Triumphs. But
Nice.
he'll work on everything. He's a dirt bike rider and just a good guy. But he's won't even have his shop open until the beginning of the month, and he's got about 15 calls coming in a day for people wanting him to work on bikes. So I just happened to be on the phone with him this morning, but that kind of tells me that people are having their bikes fixed. They're not just running down to buy a new one. And I
Well, do
think
you know how expensive new motorcycles are?
I
Oh
haven't had
my
a new one for a
gosh, I
while.
was shocked. You
it's
used to be
crazy.
able to buy
So
a car for that.
definitely for the gold wings, and they're pretty proud of those Harleys as far as what they go for. But if you look around, you can actually see some used stuff, you know, for a lot better price than you saw it not too long ago when nobody could get their hands on anything. And I think
Oh yeah,
that's
because of the supply chain.
yeah. So I mean, motorcycles are obviously just a little section of everything, but it's everything out
And
there.
it is discretionary. It's
Yes.
discretionary income, but they're super big in Southern Oregon because it's part of our outdoor lifestyle.
Oh my gosh. I know. I'll have something out being off road this weekend. There's no doubt about that. So I kind of got the bug too. But either way, I mean, we have basically 19 members of the Fed that get to tell everybody what the cost of money is what it really boils down to.
Hmm.
You know, and there's a little dissension as far as they go. This is literally the second longest time in 35 years that they've gone from having a rate cut. And that's pretty substantial as far as that goes. I mean, they raise them, they lower them, they do things, but it's been a long wait for them to start cutting rates.
Well, but so here's my concern is that I jokingly call it, it constipates the market. When the Feds start making these broad statements, predicting the future, for example, some buyers are going to want to wait for the rates to go down, not understanding the teeter-totter thing, right?
Hmm.
There's when the rates go down, the prices are going to go up. It's not going to be instantaneous. But we are in a digital age now, so it's certainly a faster response. The prices respond because it just is. That's what happened last
Oh,
time. I'm saying it's going to
I
happen
know.
again. And the best thing, don't you think, Guy? The best thing somebody could do right now if you're buying is to buy something and then refinance later, because then you get a little softer price. The prices aren't bottoming, but we certainly have a little dip in the market right now because
Abs-
the rates are high. So it's a teeter totter.
Yeah, and whether it goes fast or slow, I really do think we're right at that tipping point right now. As far as just it's not going to be long before you're offering to mow somebody's lawn to get them to accept your offer. It's really um and
Well, and I know guys saying that tongue in cheek, but during the last spike where we were having these arm wrestling matches for houses, we had people putting in their contract that they would clean the yard, they would mow the yard. It was just, so we're talking about like the seller's going to move to a new house and the buyer that wins the bid on their house is going to mow the seller's new house.
yeah,
We're
I
not
mean
joking. We're not joking. Which is
that's
beautiful. Sorry.
I
Beautiful.
was. That's the funny part. I
Oh
literally
no, we had
was.
them in contracts. It was really funny,
Oh my
but it
gosh.
worked. But it worked, it
Dude.
worked.
Well, yeah, and I definitely did see, over and over and over again. It's like, hey, I'll waive an inspection. Hey, I'll fix something if the
Oh
appraiser
yeah,
calls it
remember
out.
that. I'll waive the appraisal. I'll make up 10 grand of the appraisal. Remember that?
Yes, yeah, and so being able to get in right now, because historically rates are not much higher than what's been considered a good rate. And I don't want to discount the fact that it's very, very expensive. And if you cannot afford it, don't, I'm not saying to anybody get over your head, but the difference in right now and a year from now, prices are going to be up, rates might be down, and like you said, people do have the opportunity to refinance, and we're not gonna charge bank fees for people that refinance with
Well,
us.
you're
So it's
not. Mutual
yeah,
mortgage is not. Yeah.
yeah. So it's one of those things that, there are costs baked into refinancing as far as, if you have your impounds, but meaning your taxes and insurance that are all part of your payment, you will have to rebuild that account, but that money does belong to you so that you will get that, you will get a check for your taxes and insurance back. So then you're just looking at some title insurance that's discounted a little bit because it's been done in the last 3 years. So
But this is why people need to come and talk to a lender, talk to you so that they get the entire financial picture because it's not one sided. Everything has a cause and effect. And I just don't think people people realize that. And we also have a share of the buyer population waiting for a big crash.
Yes.
So we still have that out there too.
Yeah, and the reality is, even if foreclosures go up a little bit or something happens a little bit, we've actually been doing pretty responsible lending for a long time now. So, I don't think people are going to be in a position where they're going to go foreclose and things are going to crash. There is so much pent up demand right now for houses that even if that was to happen a little bit, there's plenty of buyers to do it. And if you saw that happening, then that would force the Fed to start lowering rates. It would force, you know, people to be a little bit more scared, and then the mortgage-backed securities that we trade on would get better. So then you'd see a double-edged sword where now all of a sudden you have a bunch of inventory and you have lower rates, which I do still expect to happen this year, but
I
just
just don't
when.
want it to be in response to some cataclysmic, economic event, because, well, then there's a lot more wrong in our world than our mortgage rates. And
Yes.
you were talking about lagging indicators for the foreclosures to start showing up as foreclosures available for sale. That means that people were not able to get their house sold in time to forego the foreclosure or get back on track through some kind of mediation. So by the time the foreclosure numbers start showing up as higher, even to a normal level, we've already got a little bit of a problem brewing, don't you think?
Well, yeah, and if they actually start hitting the market, then that would go back.
That's that was
It
the fast way of saying it. Yeah.
Yeah, that it went back for a long way because we're still, a word I haven't used in a long time, a judicial foreclosure state. So you don't just miss two payments and you're out on your ear. They give you a long time
A
here.
long time. And in Oregon, the bank has to mediate with the person losing their house. So that's an extra step now that's new since the crash.
Yeah. So I still really, really believe that, if we see one or two, there's not going to be a big crash. There's just not enough houses for that right
Yeah,
now.
and we're tracking it every week in all three counties, and there's more $1 million sales in the residential market in all three counties than there are foreclosures, and there's non-existent short sales, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not trying to do it to sell another loan, but I firmly believe in the bottom of my heart that if you can get in now, get in and get a house because I've it's as hard as it is to sit across the desk from somebody and say, this is your rent right now. Your house is, your house payment's going to be a lot more than that because in reality it usually is these days. But we have a cost analysis that shows historically how much rents go up, historically how much you're actually buffered when you own a house. Yes, your taxes will go up 3% every year, and maybe your insurance a little bit, but you got to figure that it catches up. And the longer you're a renter, the more expensive it's going to be later on to buy a house.
Well, then there's that.
So, it's just a good. I don't know. It is a good way to buffer your family and everybody from inflation and create some generational wealth.
Yep. And we'll talk more about that in our next segment. We got to take a quick break. We're talking to Guy Giles, Mutual of Mortgage, getting caught up on Fed Week. We'll be right back after a quick word of our sponsors. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show, everybody. We're talking to Guy Giles of Mutual Mortgage. And just a quick reminder, this episode will repeat tomorrow at 8 a.m. on our new radio home, the ACE, AM 1300. We're so happy to be here, and welcome back, Guy Giles.
That's funny. I was up visiting my sister. She runs a oil research place in the San Juan Islands, and I went to visit her last week, and everybody calls her Giles. And
What's her
I
first name?
Debbie,
Oh,
but I
not
did
even
not.
close.
Nobody called her that the whole time I was there, and every time somebody says Giles, which you just did, in my head I could not stop, and it's so weird that my baby sister's a doctor and saving the whales up there. It's crazy. But
Yeah.
I'm not Giles there. I'm just some
Just
guy from the
brother.
mainland, I guess. I don't know. But I do definitely see, in the forecast that the rates are going to come down, and there definitely is a consensus that it will be this year. Um, and just, I guess, just stay tuned. Literally Switzerland was the first one, and they cut their rates a little bit, this last week. And hopefully that's a prelude to a whole lot of people realizing, before they spin us into a too bad of a recession, let's just start easing this. Any thoughts of a soft landing need to happen, and they need to start, well, a little while back, but whatever, we could still get away with something.
Well, so I have another question for you, Guy Giles of Mutual Mortgage. How sure are we that we can believe the Federal Reserve Bank this time versus all the other times when they changed their mind?
Well, I think because just some of these lagging numbers, a lot of them are 12-month averages, so if you had, just like I said on the shelter, in 2022, 2023, it was 14%. And right now it's showing the blend. Can only look at the blended one. If we try to get into all three ones, new rents and renewing ones, plus the blended, it'll get too confusing. So if we just kind of use the blended one, average wise, it was over 14%, and now it's at 2.6. But if you're averaging out the 14 with the 2.6, now all of a sudden you're right around 7. But what we're really dealing with right now is low. It's a whole lot lower than it was. Literally, one of the rents that was up over 10% is at 1% right now. And to be honest, I can't remember if it was the renewals or the newer one, but the Fed has a tendency of looking, I've said it in the past, in the rearview mirror. They're not really looking at right now's numbers. So when you're averaging out a bunch of stuff and kind of coming out of something that's easing, like inflation, when you're blending in 12 months of it, you're not taking a snapshot of where we are today or what it looks like where we'll be tomorrow.
Well, that's true.
And I alluded to that a little bit with the unemployment rate. It has ticked up, and it's almost at 4%, which still historically is not a bad unemployment rate. But you have people that invest money for a living, and they're not so dumb to look at the job numbers came out and we created $270,000 or 270,000 jobs when 210,000 full-time jobs got lost, and all of the growth is in part-time jobs.
Or
So yeah,
government.
that
There's a
looks
lot of
good.
government hires.
Yeah, oh yeah. And so that looks really good for, I don't know, somebody trying to get elected maybe, but it doesn't look so good when you look under the hood and see what's really going on right now. And if they don't want to talk to us a year and a half from now and say, well, maybe we waited a little bit too long to lower rates, just like now they're saying maybe we waited a little bit too long to raise them up. If they have any hope of avoiding that conversation, which I don't know that it even matters to them anymore, but they need to start doing something right now. And the consensus is there will be 3 rate drops still, this year. And I'm thinking maybe the unemployment numbers that come out in April will be that tipping point. If it's not, who knows? Maybe they're just trying to crash the whole damn thing.
So one of the other indicators that's probably more relevant to us, people like you and I in Southern Oregon, would be the number of mortgage applications. How are we doing on average with that?
Well, week over week, they're higher than they were, but again,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, well, we got bonked over the head 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, they went back up. So, they've been, kind of trickling down, the last half of this last week. And there have been some more mortgage applications. I think, I read a headline that people are resigning themselves to the fact that rates are up and it's going to be a little bit more expensive to buy a house. And, so every little bit that somebody hears that rates went down, applications go up a lot because there's so much pent up demand. And that was actually from the FHFA this last week, something came out just saying that there's a ton of pent-up demand for the houses. So they're there, and I'm assuming this next week will be busy again with a whole lot of new applications because they are trending down again. But and again, the Fed does not directly control where our stuff is.
Right, right.
But as people are looking at the real numbers and as these averages are coming down, it's becoming pretty blatant. Once college graduated, people can understand it, and then I guess something happens. So
You're a hoot. Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage. Always fun to have you. We've got a handful of minutes left. I wanted to talk a little bit more about jobs because I think what people don't understand is that it's the wages and the jobs that enable people to apply for mortgages to buy homes. That's the direct connection, right?
yeah, yeah, and maybe I missed a little bit of the question right there, and I apologize, but
Oh no,
def
I'm just trying to reinforce that if the job market is starting to suffer, that there
yeah.
could be a direct correlation to the number of people that are able to buy homes.
No, that's true, but what they really should do is if they start lowering this, that's going to help the cost of living for everybody. And then somebody's going to have a little bit of discretionary money to go out, like we've talked about the quads or something, to buy a lawnmower that they need or to do that. And then that in turn puts people back to work. So, for somebody to say, oh, there's no magic wand, there kind of is. And we've seen the economy turn back on, and they can do that. They can do that by just getting out of our hair. We want clean water. Let's not compromise that. But at the same time, there are things you can do to help small businesses. That's the key
Mhm.
to this whole country is small businesses. And if we can just keep our eye on that, there are jobs out there. There are people making more money right now because of COVID, because they're able to demand a little bit. A new gal that's coming on with me, Cassie, when she mentioned she had a kid, I'm looking so forward to her that she's going to be working from home for a couple of days. I will, I'll make that accommodation for the right person here in the office. And I think most people are doing that. So there is a quality of life, and it's not all doom and gloom that we get right now from some of the bad stuff that's happened. So, it's a good country. It's a resilient country. It's still a good time to buy a house. And I think you should just get in and have that conversation, whether it's with me or whether it's with somebody else, and definitely use a good real estate agent, because navigating that on your own and just maybe relying on a listing agent or something to educate you, have somebody that's working in your corner for yourself.
Yeah,
And
we'll probably be talking more about
I'm
that
thinking, and
buyer's agent and the real estate side in the months to come. But for now, in the minute or so we have left, how do people get a hold of you?
well, I give out my cell phone number. It is 541-944-6987. You can Google me also at Mutual Mortgage. Pretty easy to find. You can look at reviews and that sort of thing. I think my reviews look pretty good. A couple hundred that came through. If you Google me.
So, Guy Giles, Mutual Mortgage, we appreciate your sponsorship. We appreciate you coming on the show as often as you do, especially during Fed Week. Any quick predictions on timing of the 1 to 3 reductions in interest rate in the 30 seconds we have left?
I'm thinking maybe 2 months from now we get our very first one.
Okay, so this is
So
March.
yeah, so I'm thinking, you know what? Let's just have a bet. March, I'll bet you lunch. How's that?
Okay, well,
And
I'm hoping that they do it in June. I think that would be moderate. So you want to take May and I'll take June?
yes, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay,
And
folks, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week. If you want to be a sponsor or a guest, feel free to reach out to me, Alice Lema, 541-301-7980. Have a beautiful Southern Oregon weekend. Bye now. And just a reminder, we're going to repeat this tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m.